Again, happy to have Andy Olson from East Central Energy provide a case study on their program and how they've approached the CCAA. And as we noted at the beginning of the call, East Central Energy is one of our first certificates of inclusion to be approved. So again, congratulations, Andy and Alicia, on that. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Looks like we're out of time. No, 11:30. Dang it. Thanks for asking us to share our story here a little bit. We do enjoy sharing our perspective and how things went for us, not only through this process, but also kind of the history of our program and how that's helped us achieve this. So like what I'd like to cover is kind of our experience with the application process. We're happy to have received our certificate of inclusion, and we've got that out to our company and to our members now. And also like to talk about the reasons why we wanted to get in early with the application process, and then also kind of probably more so some of the neat kind of unintended benefits that I've seen in this whole process, kind of the ancillary stuff that, as I think back on where we are now, even just in a couple of years, how this has helped us kind of rethink our program a little bit and help us get better. Probably just share random thoughts as I go, most likely. Whoops, back. I don't think I need to insult anyone's intelligence about why IVM is good and what it actually means. I think over the last couple decades, there's been a lot of research and a lot of information out there, and people buying into the idea that mechanical maintenance is not really a long-term solution in a lot of scenarios. And this picture on the left that's more maintenance, I would say, where you're maintaining that floor vegetation and the edge, but you're not really managing it. You're just, that's more of a 5-year window. It's going to grow back. People have planted stuff out in the right of way, which is not a good thing. We're not really managing that corridor like we are on the right here. This is more of like a 30-year window. We have things planted at an appropriate distance, and we maintain this floor vegetation to a compatible ecosystem that will require very little input. I think we all know this by now, but for us, as foresters or vegetation managers for utilities, and I can't wait to have more people enrolled in this so we can start to talk a little bit more in depth and compare notes on how we're viewing some of these things. But I like this picture because it demonstrates two different management types, obviously mostly mechanical on the left, and herbicide application cycle after cycle on the right here. And I think what was kind of neat for us at some point, we like to see this grassy floor look to the right of way and a storm hardened edge. But when, several years back, I think we started to start looking at this through the lens of ecosystem ecology and say, maybe solid cool season grasses that are, mostly canary grass and smooth brome in a lot of cases, maybe that's not the best thing to be out there for vegetation. Yes, it's compatible, but we could be striving for maybe a better, more healthy ecosystem that could it could provide better benefits to wildlife. And then, this was even before we even thought about this, the Monarch Butterfly and the CCAA. We just thought it made good financial sense, and it makes good ecological sense as land managers. And so at some point we start asking ourselves, well, is this better? This is probably better than having reed canary grass out there. Why do we want to start? Why do we want to control plants that are non-targets? And at that point, we started telling our applicators, only treat target vegetation. And what is target vegetation? Tall growing woody plants. Don't waste your time, your effort, and translation money into treating things like this, milkweed, fireweed, things that are compatible, but also going to give us great wildlife benefit. And so we changed our mindset a little bit at some point, and to me, it starts getting into the reasons why we applied to this. To me, these objectives align so beautifully of creating habitat for monarch butterflies and also creating a compatible ecosystem corridor for utility vegetation that also has a good ecosystem component to it for wildlife benefit. And so the fact that we were doing that, it was kind of an easy sell to our executive team and to upper management to say, and I guess to kind of address, you know, Tim's point about what does it cost? What's it going to cost if you find you need to trigger, if the trigger is there for what's the term?
Adaptive management.
Yeah, if you have to perform adaptive management, well, in my eyes, my opinion was always, well, it's still going to be cheaper if you got to do something like plant some milkweed somewhere and watch it. That's still going to be better in the long run than the potential of us as utilities being told you can only mow at these times a year, you can only treat in this way, in this method at these times a year, and you can only do, you know, if you start looking at the potential downside to not enrolling, for us, enrolling, even if we found out that we didn't meet those criteria in our evaluations, I think it was still going to be, the upside is going to outweigh it. Just my opinion, but I like to hear those things because we utility guys, I think very similarly in a lot of ways, and we're always thinking about what are the impacts of this going to be long term. So anyway, all that to say, we didn't find a lot of downside to enrolling in this, and the early enrollment obviously was able to save us some on the cost, which was attractive to our company. And in terms of non-compliance, I think, Dan, you said it well yesterday that, you know, if your plots fail the test, that's not non-compliance. The only non-compliance is not doing your plots. So I think with that in mind, we can feel safe that we're not risking a lot by enrolling. And I think we have to kind of give credit to NRECA a little bit for that, because they're kind of the glue that binds us co-op utilities, and they really helped think through this process of how are we gonna entice people to enroll in this and not have a lot of anxiety about it maybe. But I think, you know, for us now, we're, as I said before, we're re-examining the ecosystem component of our rights of way, and I think it's wonderful. We've got crews out there with iPads that their maps are on there, and they're applying herbicide, and they can flip right over to their Seek app and identify plants if they're unsure of, you know, is this a target, is this not? And I think over time it becomes second nature. But we do have a lot of people out there really interested in, you know, they may not have even known or cared the difference from spotted knapweed to butterfly weed, and they're starting to understand that there is better quality habitat. And we're only doing the tier 1 evaluations, but I really do like the idea of trying to get a good count of your stems in that plot, because, you know, the way we've seen it, if there's 6 in there, there's going to be 50 at least, just because of the way they colonize an area. So we have had some plots with nothing, but we've had plots with tons, and we even saw that with Dan's demonstration video on the YouTube video, where I think if you have some, you're going to have a lot. So I think it benefits us to try and get a count, and everything you said previously, Dan, I completely agree with that. Now, it was pretty cool, I thought, when Alicia, that was my partner in applying here, who did the bulk of that application process. She's not in the forestry group, she's not in the land management group, but when we started putting this information out throughout the company, she kind of stepped up and said, I've heard of utilities setting aside some of their land for monarch habitat, and this again was before the CCAA was even being talked about. What could we do as a utility to get better at creating this habitat? And she jumped on board, got on the environmental team, and really took off with it. After more and more discussions of this at the supervisory level, you know, I had the substation manager approach me and say, "Oh, did you realize we just rebuilt that substation? It's on 1.5 acres. I bet you anything, if we don't put turf grass in there and we plant some decent seed down there, we could get some great pollinator habitat." And this was not a guy that I typically would have thought would care too much about that. And I thought it was really awesome that he came to us and with the idea. And 2 years later, we got ourselves some seed, and we kind of did like a do-it-yourself project, and it turned out really, really nice. And these are a couple of the before and after views, but I got a call from him this summer, and he said, "You got to get by there because it looks fantastic. You guys did such a great job." I did not expect that from this guy. I expected him to say, "This looks awful. We're going to mow it again." And, you know, you might be saying, "Yeah, that's black-eyed Susan. That's kind of cheap thrills because they germinate quick and they don't last forever." But I do think that, you know, if we do this in a way that you create kind of a long-term alternating bloom of things, it can turn out very well for everybody, even aesthetically. And then you can see we do have a lot of natural milkweed that came in, some invasives and some things we need to control. But I really like this, what happened here, and it went much better than I would have expected. After that, in our discussions with the environmental team, we had this idea to maybe, you know, just make a little square out here by this solar array with a demonstration plot of here's what we're trying to accomplish on the right of way in terms of an ecosystem. And also, you know, if we made it big enough, we're going to create some habitat in this urban environment for some pollinators. Well, the CEO said, "Well, why don't we just do that whole area?" And we're like, "Well, okay, that's like 2 acres, but yeah, great." So we're in the process of converting this all to native prairie with the seed mix is a pollinator mix, and it gets into some wetland here. So it's kind of neat how we were able to create a couple of different ecosystems in one place. And I didn't include a picture of this because it's not much to look at currently, but well, lucky for us, no one's coming to the office, so they can't see the the non-flowering part of this installation. I'm almost done here. Got one more. And then there was another site here where we have another pole yard, and when we started looking at the lands we own, somebody else up here suggested, "Well, we've got this whole area that's a couple of acres. How about we convert that too?" So we're in the process of converting this as well. And then also another nice little square patch right here where we can put signs up and saying this is what this means, and this is why it's here, and this is what we're trying to do everywhere that we manage vegetation on the right of way. So lots of neat things happened because of this. I think that, you know, 5 years ago we would have never probably had this on our radar, but all in all, it's been a great process, and Iris and Dan have been great helping us along the way with the application. And I like the idea of sharing that application if we can. I'm pretty sure we could, but I'm going to check with our company and make sure if we can share that with anyone that wants to see it. How do we do the application and what's it look like? I did forget to put my contact information here, but if anyone wants to get in touch with us on how the process went, I'm really looking forward to talking with more utilities on how they're viewing this, how they're choosing their monitoring sites, how they're viewing, the things we already discussed, like, is this the set aside, or is this actively managed because we treated the circuit, but we didn't treat this span? How do we determine what we're calling these things? And I agree with the idea that if you don't do anything, you're setting it aside for 6 years till you treat it again. All those things, we all have the same questions, so it'll be nice once we can bounce things off each other a bit. I didn't quite take 20 minutes, Iris, but that's all the content I had. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to flail away at them.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Andy. I think that was great. Yeah. So we can open it up if there's any questions for Andy to start off with.
Yeah. Hey, Andy, this is Eric Johnson. It's always cool to, like you said, to get people that you don't expect to become a partner like that. So that's kind of my goal too on what we're looking to do. But I had a couple questions. So on some of the concerns we're getting, especially if we're looking around substations and more like office space, is if you plant a seed mix that's more of a tall grass prairie, it gets pretty crazy looking pretty fast. With big blue stem, Indian grass. Did you on your seed mix? Were you worried about that? And if you were, did you try to, what was your grass seed side? Did you go for the shorter growing?
Good question. Yeah, we didn't. We brought that concern to the Minnesota Native Landscapes, is the company we work through on this. So we consulted with them and said, we don't want big blue stem necessarily. We don't want switchgrass, Indian grass, that stuff that may blow into the sub itself. So it was a short grass Mesic prairie, and we actually, I think we had them make a custom seed mix that included little blue stem but not big blue stem, and things like that. We tried to get away from the real tall forbs as well. So yes, we did take that in consideration, and we'll see what comes, because like they told us, there's going to be a lot of native seed in the soil that you're going to have to see what comes up. And if you want to manage against that taller growing stuff, you may have to actively take out some natives in order to do that. But yeah, we did for sure.
Okay, cool. And we're trying to roll this out from a programmatic perspective and not necessarily have to reinvent the wheel on every single site. I'm trying to kind of get this in our standards as far as what you did with substations, if it makes sense and we don't have to mow it. Have you or anybody else on the call kind of used those standard Pheasants Forever mixes? I think a lot of them are the short growing solar farm mixes that we're kind of looking at. Does anybody else have experience with that, or did you guys look at that?
Basically, all we did was ask, because I was pretty close with one of the guys that manages the company. I just asked him, what would you recommend here? And they made us a custom mix, and we went from there.
Okay.
I know
that
that
going to kind of be your standard from now on, maybe, or just kind of tweak it as you go?
Yeah, what we'll do is give this 2 or 3 years and see what's there. And if there's anything that we find is problematic, we'll just say, take that out of this custom mix, and they can do that fairly easily. It might cost a little more to get it done that way, but because they do have their standard mixes, but they can custom make them.
Cool.
And Eric, I was just to say, I'm not familiar with Pheasants mix in particular, but I know we've worked with a few utilities to create some standardized native seed mixes with our native plant nursery to, hit certain height requirements and cost points and that kind of thing. So that if that's something you're trying to do, maybe we could talk about that offline.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
I will say, Eric, this is Tim. We did use a Pheasants mix just as a demo. It was actually a deer mix. We call it Candy Clover. Worked really well. So some of them are good. Some of, I can at least speak to that. If you want clover for deer, it works really well.
Yeah, I just know we've done the same thing on very specific projects, and it takes a lot of time when you're trying to come up with seed mixes and to really fine tune it. But I know Pheasants Forever has kind of like a seed store online, and I stumbled upon one of their I think it's solar mix. One's 36 feet or 36 inches and below, the other's 30 inches or below. It looked like a pretty diverse mix, and the price was really good. So I'm assuming they get bulk price and they kind of pass that on to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have set mixes for just about every scenario you could want. They can shift it, but actually pretty much any seed company you work with could help you set that up as well. And I would say defer to your state NRCS. Most of them have a lot of set mixes that they typically will recommend on CRP sites or any other conservation program that they're pushing.
Yeah, good point.
This is Roy from Wetlands, and Aaron beat me to it. Thanks, Aaron. But the state agencies and with NRCS and USDA have a lot of good seed mixes that they'll recommend for certain areas. And I think one of the things too that we've seen here in Virginia, it's a lot of experimental plots, is that it could be the same mix, but based on soil type and aspect, different species on that same mix may dominate in certain areas versus other plots. So, you can put the same seed mix in 5 different areas and have 5 different results. So just something to think about, which is, it's kind of cool from a biodiversity standpoint to watch and to monitor.
Yeah, that's good info. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at, is getting some regional information or regional expertise based on soils and topography to, if we do have a standard seed mix, let them look at it and make recommendations what to remove, what to add. So yeah, thanks guys.
Other questions for Andy?
Eric, this is Philadelphia. You mentioned that your folks in the field are using the Seek app to ID plant. Is that working pretty well for them to do the IDs that they're trying to make?
Yeah, it's. I've found that it's off once in a while, but it'll get you down to genus very, very consistently, I think, based on your location, and they really do like it. And we've even gone to, I'd like to be able to share this within our company when we start getting these pollinator plots going. We're going to encourage our employees on their breaks or whatever to get out there and ID plants and take some seed if you want when it's ready, and grow your stuff at home if you want. But to answer your question, I think that the Seek app is really working really well, and it's free and easy to use.
That's good, because I think if we can eventually, I think that was one thing that I found kind of frustrating, was the inability to be able to identify 4 nectar species consistently throughout the enrolled lands. So if we could potentially use that more broadly for folks that aren't plant experts, then maybe we can enrich the data that we're getting on the nectar species in the adopted acres.
But I think that the more users they have of that app, the better it's going to get for identifying things also. So I haven't, like I said, sometimes it'll give the wrong species and it, but it'll get close a lot of times.
I had to, I'm not a plant person either, but I did have to use Google Lens, and that seemed to work pretty good too. I don't know if anybody else has any experience with that.
Is that Lens, L-E-N-S?
Yeah, basically I have a Google phone, so I was out there doing some sampling, didn't know really what it was, took a picture of it. It's like right in the photos, click Lens, and then it pops right up with what the plant was. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's good. That sounds like we have some competing apps.
Spread the love
I haven't
around.
used Google Lens on anything yet, but I will put a plug-in for that Seek app. That thing is pretty awesome. The nice thing about that too is that you can do pollinator species with it. You can do mammals. You can do herpetofauna. So it just makes it a little bit more fun. It might not make your your evaluation of your plot go faster. You know, if you end up geeking out and, you know, trying to ID everything that's out and around you. But so far for me, it's been, I'd say probably like 90% accurate on the species identification.
Well, yes, I think geeking out comes with the territory for a lot of us, but the other thing I like about Seek is it stores it for you in your catalog, so you can go back to everything you've identified, and you know, even scroll through them, or if you can't ID it at the time, you can go through it and see if you identified it before. And so I like that part too.
Okay, we have a couple minutes left. Any last questions or comments for Andy?
This is Dan. Andy, thanks for sharing the presentation. I think it was really great to hear how, you know, it's kind of inspired a lot of conversations internal to the company. Mm-hmm. So that's always great to see. And then thanks for sharing your perspectives on just enrollment and, you know, the fact that's, you know, low risk and, you know, was kind of a no-brainer for you guys. So I appreciate that. So thanks for sharing.
Yep. Thanks for having me.